Clemente Figuera generator solid state update. Okay, I was reading the patent, fine tuning it, and there was some weird language, such as the resistors on the drawing is just an elementary drawing to show the uh, the design or the principle, right? Elementary. So obviously the resistors, he's not showing the correct resistors. Okay, then it says something about the voltage or the current. After it does its thing, it returns to the source generator where it was taken. Okay, so it's taken out of the positive terminal. And if you're going to return it where it's taken, you got to return it to the positive terminal, or most of it, to match that description. So instead of using resistors or wires or coils that are, why don't we use transformers and harvest the resistance? So the resistance that's causing the fluctuation, don't burn it into heat, transfer it to a secondary, recapture it into the battery. Okay, so that was my thought pattern. So I wired this up just like the patent, with each diode is one pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This H bridge isn't used. Now, because you have two contacts on one H bridge, and you have to make before break, it has to do a little crisscross. It has to do 1, fire 2 over here, turn 1 off. Fire 3, turn 2 off. So it has to crisscross each one, because you can't have two hot terminals on one H bridge at a time. One has to go hot, the other one has to go hot, that has to go off, then that one has to go out, then that one has to go off, and then blah blah, has to follow that pattern. Anyway, it took me a while to figure out the wiring and program it all. Then each of the secondaries come out into a bridge rectifier and have their own leads back here. Right now I have them all shorted. The one of them shorted with an amp meter. Now the question is, how does it defeat Lenz? So I hooked up the light bulb and it does the whole switching thing fine. So I found a good frequency, which I think is adequate. I don't know. And I hooked up the transformer, the triple layer one, just for a test. And I tuned the frequency so it looks good on the scope. Okay, again, I don't know the exact frequency you got to use. Anyway, here's what I found. Quite interesting. So I turn it on and it's going. Now, getting my alternating current with my steps because of that resistance. Okay, that's the output of the transformer. Then I'm just looking at one of these. Remember, I should be harvesting all 7 of these. I'm just looking at the amperage on one to see what's happening. I have 140 milliamps coming back to be collected, right? Because it's just shorted, so all that can be collected. Now, obviously, shorting the secondaries raises your input amperage, but raising the input amperage raises the transformer amperage and raises the induction. Okay. Now, the whole thing about beating Lenz, which no one could figure out, I'm thinking this is it. Watch what happens here. 138 milliamps. I'm going to short the output. Output shorted, 165. Now, all of these obviously got more amperage in them now. Unshorted, 138. When I take the amperage from the induction coil, I get an increase of amperage on the output of the secondaries, on the output of the resistors. So therefore, Lenz is probably happening, but when it happens, it sends it into the primaries, which induct into the secondaries, and I get more amperage out to collect. So I'm thinking maybe that the whole point of beating Lenz in this configuration is that you're harvesting the secondary and it pushes it back, the drag, able to be harvested without going to the input because it's transferring to the secondary instead of transferring to the source. But then you could take that, step it up, which I'm doing now, and put it back into the source. So the source would show no lens drag if all these secondary transformers were feeding back into the source, because you're actually harvesting the lens drag. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking, but I like what I'm seeing here. I like this, that I could harvest from the resistance, and then when I short it and take power, I get all that power back. Everything I short, everything I take from the transformer, I get right back. Now, obviously I'm nowhere near over unity. I'm using 36 watts, and I don't know how much, and I'm not really getting much out of this, but that's probably why he has 8 of these big coils, and I'm sure this isn't correct, but it's just something to test with. But anyway, it's quite a fascinating thing to try.